Leeds is a major city, but it's been consistently left behind in terms of transport. Other cities such as Newcastle and Birmingham, and even Croydon town centre, have had metro and tram lines built. Leeds, however, has been consistently denied funding from the Department for Transport.
It's interesting that you mentioned Newcastle, because if we take two examples of Newcastle and Birmingham, what they had in place was an integrated transport plan which sat on the shelf. It had been signed off by everybody involved, and when funding became available they were able to pull it off the shelf and say we want to build this phase of our plan, and therefore they have quite a good and integrated system and they carry on expanding. Leeds has never had a document like that. That is precisely the document I'm working on for this city, so that when funding becomes available the city can immediately turn around and say we'd like to bid for this funding to build this part, this is how it fits into our bigger picture. But this is what I mean about having an integrated transport plan. So they go for a line-by-line approach, but the actual big plan is there. You know, eventually we want a tram running here, we want it running there. At the moment we've got money, so we're going to build this phase because this is the most important part of the plan, and we slowly move outwards and build it up. Supertram, in my opinion, had some major flaws in it. One of the major flaws was the fact it didn't link into anything else other than Leeds. So it didn't move on to Bradford, our neighbouring city. It didn't leave any ability to use the hard rail so we could link it to Harrogate and York. And the places where it was actually running in the city wouldn't have really done anything to reduce congestion because we were running through areas of low car population, yet taking up road space. So there were a lot of lessons to be learned from Supertram.
The failed Supertram bid has left Leeds behind a whole host of other smaller cities, such as Nottingham and Edinburgh. In fact, local politicians have viewed a rapid transit system so important it has been central to every local transport plan since the early 1990s. Not everyone agrees though. We met Alison in Roundhay, who shared her views of Leeds' local transport system.
I think the public transport is very good. Buses every 10 minutes. As you get later in the evening, they're sparser, but I suppose that's fair enough. I think trams are silly. They can only go on the tramways, and therefore they're not flexible. They cost an exorbitant amount of money to put in the tramways, which is then restricting. Whereas ordinary buses, you can have bigger ones or smaller ones, you can change the routes. Take them down the side roads. I think we do need to stick to buses.
The latest proposal to have received funding in the spending review is New Generation Transport, or NGT. Running largely on reserved busways and bus lanes, it is hoped the scheme will combine the cost-effectiveness of buses with the efficiency and attractiveness of trams. NGT will be a 3-line trolleybus network forming the first phase of rapid transit in the city. Stretching from a park and ride site in Stourton in the south, NGT will follow the planned segregated Supertram route north. Looping round central Leeds, it will connect the major landmarks of the city, including the upcoming Trinity development and City Station. An eastern branch will link out to St James's Hospital, connecting some of the most deprived parts of the city to the prosperous heart. Continuing north, NGT will run along the busy University corridor through Hyde Park and Headingley, with some services terminating at the park and ride site at Boddington, just off the Outer Ring Road. The line will terminate in the affluent Holt Park area of the city. NGT has been a saga in itself and won't be completed until 2018. It received funding from the Labour government before the coalition, but the coalition delayed announcements by putting it in the spending review. It was eventually given the green light in July 2012, 3 years after the bid was first submitted.
Why should we always have to go to the Department of Transport for funding? Why can't we decide locally on what we want?
The DFT is talking about decentralising some of its decisions, probably not those on the scale that you'd be talking about for a tram network.
We've got plans to raise almost £1 billion to start bringing in modern transport systems. TIF, and that's like a tax system that you keep all the money, then you borrow against it, and you can put it towards projects that help the economy. we've got the idea of small increases in the precept between all the authorities in West Yorkshire and York, and these have been worked out by KPMG's or PwC's organisations, so they're fairly robust figures that we're working to. This is not a Keith Wakefield pipe dream financial model. This is a model well and truly worked out by professional people, and that's the way we'll have to go, because the begging bowl, the old financial model of us to Whitehall, has now well and truly finished.
So, everyone believes the London bias in our government must stop. We are one of the most centralised countries in the world, and other areas are sacrificing their opportunities to help London remain a top world city. Developing cities like Leeds are desperate for devolved power to help them succeed. Can Leeds remain the UK's second financial centre by relying on a basic bus network? Ray Wilkes believes so.
NGT is just a prestige project, in my opinion. It is good insofar as it would electrify the buses, and that would be less pollution in the locality and some improvement in energy efficiency. But the way things are developing, there may be different ways of electrifying buses in the near future. This is a big gamble. NGT is very expensive, and what I would do is to maximise bus corridors, get them improved. When you've got all your buses working properly and lots of people on them, then you can start thinking of more expensive things. Light rapid transit is extremely expensive. We have a rail network that covers a lot of the job that LRT could do, but you can actually, anything a LRT can do, a bus on a guided busway or a good bus lane system can do much more cheaply. So I think they do better concentrating on getting bus lanes in, enforcing them and allowing buses to do the job. The buses can do a brilliant job, but not if there's cars parked on the route.
I think Leeds needs a modern transit system. Now, I support the new generation transport bid, but all the evidence is that, you know, a light rail or tram system would be best. We are a major city. We should have a transport infrastructure to match.
Unless there's very bad congestion, buses can pay for themselves out of the fare box. And if we had more bus lanes, a better bus priority, then we could have a much better bus system anyway without any government money going in.
I get the bus to Horsforth every day. It's quite expensive really. I think it's about £4.60 for a day rider. It's really quite long as well. You're waiting for quite a while. The buses aren't that frequent. I mean, in some ways it's good because I've got a good amount of time to sit there and read my book. But yeah, I do think it is too expensive really. There is a train from Horsforth to Leeds. And yeah, it's quite a lot cheaper actually.
There's just a prejudice against buses. They haven't got the glamour and prestige of trams and trains, and that's why politicians are a bit, and especially the bureaucrats, are a bit unhappy about buses. Also because there's self-financing, it's harder to bring them under political control.
Commutes from Gilderson to Leeds College of Art every day. Her short train journey takes her from Leeds City Station to Morley Station on the Huddersfield line. She explains why she prefers trains to buses and shares her experiences of being a rail commuter.
I use my car every morning to get to the train station, and then I get the train into Leeds, and then I walk up to college from the station. At one point I used my car, but the journey was quite tedious and I had to pay for parking, so I thought I'd give the train a try. And I get a weekly pass, which is £13 or £12.95, something like that. And on the bus it's about £16 a week, and it's better on the train because I can use it Saturdays and Sundays as well. Usually the service is quite good, it's very reliable, and But quite often I am stood up, but I don't mind because it's only a couple of stops. But yeah, it's quite good really. I have caught the bus to work on occasions, but the journey's too tedious. The traffic tailbacks are too long and the bus is noisy. So I prefer to get the train. Possibly if the buses were quieter and if you didn't have to queue all to the traffic lights with all the other traffic, you could just go straight through. I wouldn't get a bus from Gilson because I couldn't trust it to turn up on time. Occasionally there have been train cancellations and we've all been stood like lemons on the platform. Nobody's told us anything, and so when an official comes walking along, everybody crowds round him and you can't really gather what's happening. You just end up being like sheep, following everybody up the staircase, across to another platform, and just hoping for that you're doing the right thing really. We could do with having more carriages. There are only 2 carriages tonight. Sometimes there are 5 and people tend to just get on the first 2 because they think the other 3 might actually be going somewhere else. That's how rare it is to get sufficient carriages for everybody. It's difficult really. I think they just haven't got the rolling stock and they can't afford new ones. They have put the prices up, but we're not seeing the carriages that we need really. It'd be great if we could have a station in Gildersham again because it's just too far to walk. They did used to be, but not anymore.
There's several keys to this. You've got to get Network Rail to put the investment in. You've got to get through the planning process. Everybody says that they want better rail links and everything else, but you watch the fuss when you want to build the railway through the countryside. And then you've got to get the train operating companies to agree to actually run those trains. Look, the fact is that Network Rail, and I've spoken to them, can see a lot of opportunity and a lot of reason to build a station at Methley. What's the sticking point on this now? Well, the sticking point on this is, can you persuade the train companies to actually stop at Methley? Because it's not just the time the train stopped, it's the slowing down time, it's the speeding up time, it's the knock-on effect into the city. So these things need a lot of negotiations. But the fact is, ever since Beeching, if we look at Leeds as a clock, from 11 o'clock to 3 o'clock, there is not a single railway track in this city. And therefore we need to be looking at those tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people in that area of this city. How are we best going to link up to them? Which we start to look at maybe some light railway engineering solutions, we can see that things become more viable. The fact is that the Victorian Railways, everybody does as the heyday scheme, all went bankrupt, and they had to be bailed out by governments. But if we look at the London Underground system, how did that develop? How did that expand? The government of the day said, build this railway line out into the middle of this field, and you can have the land either side of it to build on. So the private investors came in, they invested their money, they built the railway track, they built the underground system, they then built all the houses, sold them off, that's how they made their profits. What you remember about government spending is, governments don't earn any money, governments don't have money. All the money the government has is yours. The money that the government has been generated through private business. So when people say, should it be private business doing it or should it be government doing it? Well, actually, that is exactly the same thing. One of the most important steps forward in being able to integrate the transport system of this city and to invest in the future is that the Localism Bill has freed the local councils to be able to borrow money. That is very important.
In the end, I think we need to value local government to celebrate what it can do, because the decisions that councils make, the services they provide, the extent to which they respond to the needs of their communities has a huge impact on all of our lives. And we need local government to thrive, and I think the government, Eric Pickles, are making that rather difficult at the moment.
The first phase of High Speed 2 recently received royal assent, and the second phase is due to reach Leeds in 2033. This would bring Sheffield to within 15 minutes of Leeds and London to within 80, and it could provide opportunities to expand local rail networks too.
After a lot of lobbying from a lot of us, the last Labour government agreed we'd have high-speed rail, it would come to Leeds, and with the first phase to Birmingham now announced, this is going to be really important to our future economic development as a city.
But of course, yeah, I'm for a high-speed rail too, but I think we need to concentrate on the here and now, linking Sheffield better up with us, Manchester, Bradford, Huddersfield, anybody travelling on those lines will realise that it's a very antiquated, slow system. The journey to Sheffield by rail is an absolute nightmare, and it should not be. It should be efficient and modern. It's not that far away.
So certainly I would like to see a line to Wetherby, but I'd like to see it linking through some of the villages, some of the large developments. At the moment, and my comments are relevant at the moment because I've said with a high-speed track, which is more than likely as it goes further north to run up parallel with the A1, you'd be about piggybacking on that development so that you could, if you're doing all the landscaping work, run the extra local line alongside that, so you can then link onto the Leeds-York line and be up to Wetherby. But of course, you still got to ask yourself about, well, okay, so we go to Wetherby, is this the best route forward to get there? Perhaps we want to link to other areas. But it's a non-argument to say that the track beds have been torn up and built on. They were removed over 40 years ago. You know, you start from scratch. You don't think, well, we're not going to do this because somebody built a house where the railway used to be. You forget all of that. You start from scratch.
It's all very well building new stations and lines to the suburban network, but what if the hub can't cope? Despite a multi-million-pound rebuild 10 years ago, the busiest station outside of London is still full at peak times.
Well, certainly Leeds is at capacity. It's very difficult. It is going to get some new platforms. But I think however good the transport gets, people will still complain that it isn't better. And the thing is, the better you make it, the more popular it gets. And every improvement they've made on this line has led to more overcrowding. If they put longer trains on, they get more overcrowding, and if they increase the frequency, they get more overcrowding, because the better it is, the more people want to use it.
The initial reaction from Network Rail when we talked about, we're not satisfied with what you're putting forward is, well, you had a considerable amount of money spent a decade ago. Well, yeah, that's great, but actually passenger numbers have gone up exponentially in a decade. We're full already at peak times. We need more investment. You can't just fob us off with the piecemeal approach you've got at the moment.
In bringing together the work of the city region, in devolving more powers and looking at ways in which local authorities can raise the finance, I think we've probably got to depend slightly less on central government and slightly more on our own resources and say, come on, if this is important for the future economic development of the city, then let's go for it.
The regions outside of London need to be given their fair share. It often does seem that London is given a disproportionate amount of funding for major schemes.
We want to be able to influence more of how money's spent. We also want, potentially, different ways of raising money. Already some of the West Yorkshire local authorities have committed to quite a substantial transport fund. Would that be great if we could borrow against that? And we could double that money. And we didn't have to go to ministers or DFT to get the authority to do that. And actually, if maybe, from a business point of view, there was a percentage increase in the business rates. Maybe not too popular. But actually, if businesses then saw a project, a facility that they knew was built from that increase in business rates, they might be much more supportive than the money just going into local or central government's coffers, and they never see the end result. We're looking for much more self-determination, much more influence locally about what we are able to do. And obviously the business community has a key role to play in that. And we as a Chamber of Commerce will be very, very open to work with others. Because we recognise, the local authorities have a key role to play in this. But equally so does business. We grow the economy. We create wealth. And therefore it's important that we are part of that debate.
One of the reasons Leeds has been so successful is it's understood that you have to work in partnership with the business community, and Leeds has applied itself to overcoming the problems that business faces, to make land available, to discuss what kind of planning permission can be given, because it's been on that foundation that our economic prosperity as a city has grown, and everybody benefits as a result.
Either way, there's strong consensus that Leeds has been given a poor deal from Westminster and is suffering as a result. So let's keep Leeds growing, let's fight for the support that a responsible government should give a major city, and let's make sure that in 20 years' time we can be proud of a fairer and more efficient Leeds.
If we've got good transport infrastructure in place, that's the key. That's where I want Leeds to be 50 years from now, is a highly integrated city.
A major European player.
The world won't necessarily come to Leeds. We have to get out and sell Leeds.
This is a city with a really proud history. It's got a lot going for it. It's got some big challenges, but I am absolutely confident that we can meet those and carry forward that success into the future if we pull together.